This is a Fox News Alert. I'm Kevin Cork in Washington. We've been watching the president's remarks in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia at the GCC summit. We've been joined by a pretty robust conversation of individuals here in Washington and abroad, unpacking not just this trip, but also what's coming up in the day ahead, including today. And I can point this out. We just received word from a White House spokesperson that Syria's president, al-Shara, told President Trump that he invites American companies to invest in Syrian oil and gas. Spencer Brown, we welcome you back into the conversation here in Washington. One word to describe that.
Wow.
Yeah.
That quick, you know? I mean, that is, not to make too light of it because it is a serious deal, but I mean, this is the art of the deal. You know, Trump shows up in the region. He says that he's going to relax or completely get rid of these sanctions, give them a shot to be sort of full participants in the region and in a more global economy. And what something like this, if it pans out truly, as it sounds like the interim leader there is trying to make this happen, I mean, that is a huge blow to the Iranians, to the Russians. It severely undercuts how those two sort of foes of freedom and the free world make their money. If you look at the illicit oil sales, and not even illicit in the case of Russia, you know, selling to all these European countries that sort of cooked their own energy crisis up themselves. But this is something where if we have American companies who are inside Syria, you know, drilling, refining, doing whatever, if we can get that to market in Europe, that completely gets rid of Russia's sort of advantage that they have there. And more importantly, the Iranians, even amid pretty significant sanctions in the past, has managed to continue through some of their other bad actor friends to continue selling this illicit oil around the world in order to fund their terrorist activities. And so if we're able to undercut that with what sounds like is maybe going to be a new ally in the region, that would be huge.
Boy, this is a pretty big development. David Carlucci, your reaction to news that the Syrians are inviting the Americans to invest in their oil and gas sector?
Well, it seems great on the surface, but much of the lingering concerns, as you mentioned, Prime Minister Netanyahu from Israel, Israel remains concerned about what is going on in Syria. And the fear there is that with the lifted sanctions, with investments in Syria, that it might be good on one hand in terms of lifting up the country, but we're still not sure what this leadership, this new leadership in Syria is all about. A real checkered past. We have little details about their plans for the future. And Israel, our strongest ally, remains very skeptical and very concerned about upping the militarization in that region and providing, unfortunately, more resources for potential terrorist activity, as we've seen in the past. So I'm hopeful, obviously, as the president remains optimistic about the region. But I do believe that we need more safeguards and assurances about what is really going on in Syria, and particularly how it relates to Israel and the rest of the region. And how do we make sure that that money that's being invested does not trickle out into terrorist hands, regardless of the organization, Hezbollah, you name it. We've got to be very concerned about that. And I'm hopeful that the president's team and the administration has intelligence and assurances that that won't happen.
E.J. Kimball, your reaction to what David just pointed out there, which is you're talking about leadership now, at least transitional leadership in Syria that had previously ties to al-Qaeda. I think skepticism should rule the day as it relates to their leadership. But on the other hand, this certainly is an interesting development that really could go a long way in achieving what the president has been talking about, and that is lifting up the people of Syria.
Yeah, I think this is a great opportunity, not just on the economic side, but this puts Americans potentially on the ground in Syria, which also helps from an intelligence gathering. One of the big aspects of expanding the Abraham Accords is not just from the economic side, but it's from the military side. It's from the intelligence collection and collaboration to have a better understanding of what's actually happening in the region, to see who's operating on the ground. And to David's point, absolutely, we should be looking at this with some skepticism because of the history of the leader of Syria, but at the same time, having an opportunity to be invested on the ground in Syria, something the U.S. has not been able to do for years, provides an avenue for us to have ears on the ground and to start seeing what's happening, any remnants of the Iranian network that has been trying to continue moving weapons into Lebanon. So this is going to provide the U.S. with a bigger footprint in the region, and I think ultimately will be a positive. But at the same time, if things turn, we do have sources on the ground that should hopefully be able to inform our intelligence operators to move out. I think this is overall a groundbreaking announcement and something that we should be excited about.
I would think so. Eugene Kontorovich, your thoughts? EJ says we very well should be pretty excited about this. I think that seems to be the consensus. Do you agree? Don't believe we have your sound there, Eugene.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of reasons to be skeptical. We see that President Trump has really shook up the region and gotten everyone's attention in an amazing way. And he's accomplished what certainly President Biden could not do, which is to have regional actors really trying hard to please him. But at the same time, we need to understand that people like the president of Syria are going to try to impress, please, and flatter President Trump while giving them as little as possible. Syria does not have major oil reserves. They have about 2.5 billion barrels of proven reserves. That's less than Yemen. That's much less than Vietnam. Syria, even though it's in the Middle East, is not a major oil country. So what he's saying might sound nice, but in fact, he really doesn't have that much to offer. Now, he does not even have control over much of his country. Kurds control part, Turkey controls much, other militias control various parts. So he has a country that barely has any oil. He barely has any control in that country. And to offer U.S. access to that is a nice gesture.
I think we actually have pictures here of the president, Eugene, meeting with Syria's transitional president. I do want to ask you a follow-up, if I might, Eugene. How does Turkey react to America's decision to not just offer sanctions relief to the Syrians, but also develop more of a partnership, an economic partnership, certainly an investment partnership? How does that affect Turkey and others in the region?
So Turkey is going to be pretty excited because Turkey has been supporting the Syrian Islamic terror group that succeeded in taking over the country. So this is good for them. Again, I would not be counting partnerships with Syria in the Syrian oil sector until they materialize, because it's not clear that there's really anything there that's going to be massively worthwhile to American companies. Now, he has to offer something because he knows President Trump takes a transactional view to international politics, justly. So he needs to try to offer something, but there's really not that much that he can offer.
Excellent points as always. Eugene Kontorovich with us. We're going to take a quick time out. Thank you all for watching as we continue our coverage here on Fox News Channel. The president having a very busy day. And Riyadh, there's the picture.